Hi, once again I'm Sydney and I am a servant of the Almighty God. Today I want to talk about the instrumentation of life theory. And first I want to go briefly into why, what it is, and I'll spend some more time going into some of the details of it. First, why? Because the theory of evolution has some gaps. It has some inconsistencies. So in 1859, when Sir Charles Darwin published his work, his great work, and established that things mutate and things are constantly evolving, naturalists subsequently decided, well, okay, they got to fill in the gaps. And so they went back to this thing about, life started basically from this primordial soup. You had, I guess, a bunch of chemicals and certain conditions that occurred, that existed at a time, and somehow chemistry became biology by these chemicals somehow combining and creating and coming to life. Well, there are some real gaps to that. One of the things you see it nowadays when you look at any of these nature programs or you listen to any of these academics, they start with random. This randomly occurred in this primordial soup. But then at some point they just switch to nature, because you realize that everything, there's intelligence, the way everything works together. And now it switches between nature being some force out there to nature being within animals, because they seem to be able to manipulate themselves, like when animals change color and between a butterfly and a moth and all of these things. So there are big gaps there between random, which should not have any order to it, to what we observe, and then they switch to nature. And you say, well, explain nature. Well, there's no explanation. So that's the why. So what is this instrumentation of life theory? This is much more comprehensive and logical. This actually ties both the living and the chemistry, because as you would, if you follow it and if you purchase my book, From Whence Cometh Intelligence, or even in the podcast, you see that I talk about the beginning of our chemistry as we know it today, which really relates to almost everything. I mean, the materials we use, the medicines, all of this chemistry basically is based on someone having, Dmitri Mendeleev in 1869, having a vision. He said it. He says in a dream he got the periodic table. That's the foundation, and I consider it like our modern science, because that changed from alchemy and just thinking that you can turn lead into gold and all of that stuff into what we know now. One of the beautiful things that lines up with this instrumentation of life theory and things like that, the world of chemistry, is that when the periodic table was first described, there were a lot of elements that were missing. But based on what was defined then, we could actually project what they would be like even before they were discovered. And this is where, again, that missing piece with the theory of evolution, we don't know what's out there, we just leave it at nature. But the instrumentation of life leads us to continue doing research and discovering that which is out there. So we have the periodic table of elements, the foundation for our modern chemistry, coming to us in a vision. It now benefits the whole world. The instrumentation of life, which is, and let me get into that right now, that basically is stating that in any primordial soup, even if we accept that, you could never have the all the sensors, or as let's use the word receptors. So our ability to see, to hear, to feel, to smell, to taste, all of those are based on receptors, or sensors or receptors that we have. And to build a sensor, or a receptor in us, there are three things that you must have. You must have the ability to understand, you must have knowledge of that which the receptor is going to receive. For instance, for light, we have to have knowledge of, are we doing infrared, are we doing ultraviolet or visible light? With sound, the same. For taste and smell, we have to have knowledge of the individual characteristics of those chemicals. So you must have that first. You must also have the ability to find the materials that would respond to that. And then also the ability to build that sensor or that receptor. So in us we have all these receptors, and they are also in plants, because plants, as we know, respond to light, they respond to water, they respond to temperature. And now there is also, that thing that there is that hypothesis that they respond to the length of the day. So they must have a series of receptors. And you cannot build receptors for the length of day or for the temperature or for light or sound or moisture unless you know what moisture is or light is, and then what part of that light spectrum you're going to respond to. So, and even within that, so that receptor must have what we consider today to be processors to process that information and send it somewhere. So that something, because for instance, a plant that turns towards light, okay, so there is a receptor for light, but the receptor does not change the plant to have the cells grow so that the plant can turn. So you see, now we're also talking about having this processor in the receptor and the ability to transmit that information somewhere else, which is responsible for the growth. Similarly with us, our eyes don't move our hands or move our muscles so that we get out of the way or we move towards or away from things that we see. So that ability to build the receptor, having knowledge of that which the receptor will receive, and then wiring it up so that it can respond, it can connect to the rest of the system, that cannot, absolutely, I mean, it seems like common sense now, right? That can never happen randomly out of just chemicals in a primordial soup. This closes the gap. It does not leave that gap of nature. What this says is, whomever basically built, designed and built those receptors, that's the creator. Because those receptors have to be built before anything could be intelligent. You take a piece of, a block of wood, and it just sits there. Now, let's say it was pliable, it can move. It does not know what to respond to. You have to put those sensors or receptors on it. Then it can feel, it can see, it can hear, and then it has to be connected to the muscles that enable it to move. So even a piece of wood, let's say it had the infrastructure. And see, that's another thing. The infrastructure, our blood that flows through, which, without which we don't have life. The nerves, that infrastructure, like that enables the communication between all parts of our bodies, so the muscles, the brain, and everything else. That infrastructure cannot just spontaneously occur. So this instrumentation of life is basically saying whomever built those receptors had to have knowledge of what it was these receptors were going to respond to, receive and respond to. It also had to have the ability to wire it, because in our case, and most things have multiple types of receptors, and they all work together, so they have to be wired so that we don't hear and respond to that, then we see, and it all occurs together. And the notion that these receptors could just spontaneously occur is evidently, it's absolutely ridiculous, really, that you could have this. It does not make sense that any sensor or receptor could just spontaneously occur, because you need to have, is this receptor to light, to sound, to temperature, or to the actual, sense, taste and smell respond to the properties of chemicals outside of us. So whomever built those sensors, and we see, for instance, like with animals, they can leave scent trails, they can leave information for others using scent. And so those are very, very sophisticated receptors that are employed throughout the animal kingdom. That type of intelligence that enables these animals, based on these sensors, could never spontaneously occur. And it is also ludicrous to just say, because this is what you get now, nature did it. Well, when did random switch to nature? When did random hand over to nature? See, so this is the major gap that these naturalists have created. And now, like most things which cannot be explained, there is no cohesive, logical explanation. It's just like, well, just accept it. It's same as when the earth was flat, or the earth was the center of the universe. Now, the instrumentation of life indicates that there must be a creator, some force, some intelligent force that understood light, understood sound, understood all the chemicals. Does it not make sense then that entity also would have given us the periodic table, which is the basis for all our chemistry? Oh, by the way, along with my books, I now have this QR code that I would love you to go in and assist me to continue doing this, so that we can continue to build and ensure that we have organizations that can reach out to both religions, so that they join forces and we can create that group pressure basically on the academics, so that they eventually, because this is one of the great points about this, our goal is to have acceptance of the creator, close those gaps that now just says nature did it, and that will actually change our entire civilization, because now we'll have recognition that yes, there is an intelligent force that is responsible, based on our knowledge now of what it takes to build receptors. That information was not available, could not be available in 1859 when Sir Charles Darwin did his magnificent work. Now that we understand intelligence and what it takes, for instance, our machines can never be referred to as intelligent until we add sensors to them. When we add sensors so they can see, or things to hear, or the GPS so that they can find their current location and they can move around. This point about sensors is what can transform something, or what transforms something from an inanimate something into something that's intelligent. Something that just sits there, like our cars used to be, right? You had to put an intelligent operator in the car. Now we add sensors to the car, and the car can now, seem to be autonomous. It can become autonomous. And so, with drones and everything else. Well, similarly with living things. Every living thing has a range of sensors. I say even unicellular, animals, right? So whether you call them plants or animals, right? Like an amoeba, paramecium, they must have sensors so that they know what they can consume, right? Because otherwise they would simply say, okay, well, I'm going to try to eat, glass or rocks or whatever. So they must have chemical sensors to say this is something that, or even flight and fight and flight. So even at that level, they must have chemical sensors so they know what they can consume, what to stay away from. So the sensors are embedded in all living things. We see it in plants. Plants can turn towards light. Plants, you even have plants that attract animals and consume them, right? Yeah. So all living things from planktons, all from unicellular, all the way through, they have senses. We see things like bees, fish, birds, butterflies. They even have location sensors that are not dependent on our our GPS systems. So if our GPS system goes down, they are not affected. So when we think about that, we have to recognize that they have these location sensors, very sophisticated location sensors. For instance, you can move a hive of bees, as we have to do now, right? We've killed off a lot of bees, and so in order to have bees pollinate certain fields, they will literally truck bees from one location to another. And you want to know why that is so significant? That is equivalent to us taking our GPS and saying, this is the new home. Wherever the queen is their new home. So they can go out and they know how to get back there. You can truck them 100 miles away. Now they know this is the new home. So they reorient their GPS system, it's not global positioning, but whatever location sensors they have, they can reposition it just as we do with our GPS. Okay, and so we know that also once we build sensors or these receptors, they can be tuned. This is why we see a certain frequency, a certain section of light frequencies, and other animals may see much more. They may go into the ultraviolet and or infrared. Similarly, with our sound receptors, we see animals have way better sound receptors than us, because that's just a matter of tuning, right? We can build them and we can tune it. So this all goes along, because once you build it, you can install it, you can embed it, and you can tune it. This is why animals have so much better sense of smell than we do. But it would basically be the same receptors. They are just tuned at a much higher acuity than what's granted to us. And how do we account for mutation that we see in evolution? It makes sense now. We have machine learning. So we have a database of information that everything responds to, because all the questions and the answers are there. But with intelligence, we give it the ability to add more. So when conditions change, okay, these conditions have changed, let's look at it. Because something does not change from, okay, I am walking, to suddenly I am flying. I'm going to grow feathers. But within certain parameters, we say, okay, let's move within that, and that can change over time. So this is where we see mutation. Something becomes, and again, I go into a lot of this in From Whence Cometh Intelligence. Pick up a copy of that book. You can also please pick up another copy of Humanity's Inflection Point, which shows when this merging of science and faith, which closes all the gaps between our chemistry. And now we're recognizing, with that creator, we see that cohesiveness. It also gives us, rather than simply saying nature did it, and we leave it at that, and there's no explanation, we recognize that there are similarities to what we are doing now, because we recognize things like there is memory in all things. And this gives us a path to start searching and becoming more involved, more informed, and takes our civilization to other levels, because we recognize, just as the prerequisites for intelligence, things like intelligence, the transmission ability, all of these things, the databases, right, that you must have, because we all remember. We all have memory. Plants have memory. Animals have memory. Okay, so this gives us a path forward to realize, oh, this was built similar to what we are doing now. We may be, millions, billions of years behind, but we see the similarities. Intelligence is built similarly, and we don't just say nature did it. We recognize there's a path forward with memory. We build memory, and we are able to access memory. It's like we all have memory. So we go down that path of research, and maybe 50, 100, 1,000 years, we get so much better. It gives us a path forward, a logical path forward. It was built by someone. And these secrets are being revealed to us. Our science revealed God's methods. And so we keep moving forward, just as what we see, the logical things like DNA, right? That you build a base and then you modify and you add to it. And so we have every living thing basically being a DNA configuration. You build a DNA, then you tweak it and you add different genes and you create all these different things. It makes logical sense. This cannot come, and this is the gap where the naturalists have said it came from random and then just nature, and you can't explain what nature. But when we accept the instrumentation of life, it's because of that creator, whatever that force is, that intelligence that designed the very base and also programmed it so smart that it can now change based on conditions around it. It's self-adjusting. It's like machine learning. So this is what this instrumentation of life is about. The proof lies in the fact that these receptors that enable us to be intelligent, because we see, we hear, we have that memory within us. That is what enables us to react intelligently, just like when we put sensors in our machines. So I'll put up this QR code one more time, because I'd love for you to go out there and contribute and assist me in this, so that eventually I can build. I'm looking to build that core group and this applies to the entire world. This is all the science that we have today. It pulls everything, the chemistry and all the biology that moves us forward and gives us a path to continue our discoveries. And who knows, when we give the kudos and the praise to the creator, who knows how much more rapidly, what synergies we may release, and because now this joins really the brotherhood of mankind across the world. The true brotherhood of mankind is based on us recognizing that, just like knowledge brings us together, the computing knowledge, the knowledge of medicine, the knowledge of our chemistry, this is something that brings us all together. And simply by recognizing the creator and taking out this haphazard piece of that theory of evolution that really does not make sense, because there are logical holes in it, jumping from random to just nature, or sometimes the animals themselves are doing this. We see with the instrumentation of life that this is a much more cohesive, and it ties us all together, brings the brotherhood of mankind together. And so I would ask you to go out and contribute, because with the state of things and trying to move this forward, I would really appreciate if you would go out and assist. So thank you for taking the time to view this. I hope that you become also an instrument of sharing this, so that we can move this together. And this is for the rest of our civilization. Okay, it brings together what Sir Charles Darwin did and fills the gap backwards, enabling us to go forward from a much more sound and logical scientific footing. So thank you once again, and until next time, may God bless us all. Thanks again.